Awesome. So welcome everybody. Tonight's session is a conversation with Vince Mirabelli. Vince is a longtime colleague, and if you haven't met him, you should get to know him. Vince, also, as I've got it up on a slide here, Vince is all about LinkedIn, is a well-known educator and speaker on LinkedIn. If you go to BA World, Project Summit, things like that, Vince has a well-placed foot in both BA spaces and PM spaces, and I'm sure he can tell you where other places his feet travel when it comes to expertise. I know PMO and other things like that are very much in his wheelhouse, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm going to let him introduce himself in a minute. We're going to start. I have a few things to get through administratively, and then we'll go on and just open the floor. And Vince and I are just going to chat. I know he's going to show you some things this evening. Just to let you know where we're going, let's cover that for a sec. Tonight, we're going to talk about the process of what it took to write his most recent and first serious industry publication, okay, which is, as I've said in teasers, it's totally different to write a thing that you do not fully control and your employer has the right to judge its quality, and where it's your job, it's actually your job. It's like, it's a whole different thing when it's your job, as opposed to books I've written and stuff I've done where I retain full creative control. And nobody gets to say no to me if I want it a certain way. It's a whole different world to do that. And I'm inviting him to talk about that process, but also a few of the key things he learned. Okay, and you can download the document that he'll talk about at InfoTech. Let me get to here. Make sure I'm sharing. Yeah, my thing is shared. You already know about me. I'm not the big deal here tonight. Vince is. If there's anything I want you to know about me, it's keep looking at rylandlayton.eventbrite.com. That's where I'm putting up all the stuff I'm doing with my IIBA partners. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you have not already done so. If you subscribe or follow on this, you'll find out about the stuff we're doing. I say we because it's not the royal we. It's me and the IIBA chapters that I work with to do things for people pretty much every month. The big deal I'm doing soon is there's two things. One is the BA Masterclass. As I like to say this, and you can just go, you can look at the page right there. It'll tell you all about it, and I invite you to register, and I hope people will. We still do have seats open. We're limiting seats to 45 for the class. If I had a day to spend with you to talk to you about what I think made me a successful BA that is portable and usable and replicable by other people, that's what this day is. Okay, take a look. When you're looking at tickets, use the promotion code IIBA 2023. It'll take about $125 off the class, I believe. And there's a whole bunch of things there for BA managers if you're interested in bringing your group, or if you're part of a group and you'd like your boss to take everybody to it. Okay, there's a page there for group reservations, and it tells you the benefits of doing so, or you're welcome to drop me an email. So tonight we're talking with Vince. June 15th, we're talking about a topic, when will you be done? How to answer this in an Agile framework. That'll be about estimation, projection, range answers, how to talk about what you're going to be done with and when. Because in Waterfall, of course, we give dates and they're all wrong. That's fine. But in Agile, we want to give dates that are right, but we have to accommodate the uncertainty of the nature of our work. So we're going to talk all through that on June 15th. Register through the Eventbrite link. And then 29th and 30th of June, we are doing my masterclass, which is split into 2 days so that we don't overload anybody's brain and people can handle emergencies and regular work and get a few things done and then come back to the class. And then I'm taking July off. Okay, not going to be doing anything in July, but I will start publishing what I'm doing in August. Tonight, our IIBA partners, but I'm just going to go through. I'm not going to ask anybody to come up. Please message me if you'd like a few minutes on stage. I think a lot of our folks are not here for this tonight. This is one of our off-cycle things, which doesn't require a lot of orchestration. So the Kentuckiana chapters and so forth are continuously great. If you sign up there, Aaron is wonderful at putting out information about what they're doing, and they are extremely active. And most of their things can be done online. So please feel free to join in there and see what they're doing. Again, like the things they're doing. The Birmingham chapter slide is out of date, obviously, saying March 2nd. Birmingham chapter also similarly is doing a lot of things. I would have to tell you to take a look at what they're doing at their site, because I'm not sure what's next. But I do keep seeing emails and stuff about upcoming events. And like everybody else, a lot of their things are online. Palmetto is also a chapter that represented here and helps with everything we're doing. Very active on, IIBA certification groups. Please take a look and see if there's anything there that helps. And of course, Liz and Trent from St. Louis, who I see are here tonight. They're very active. I don't know why this slide is duplicated. Am I going backwards? Is that what I did? No, that's the end. Okay, so enough about that. Let's stop my screen sharing here because that's not needed. And Vince and I are going to talk. So Vince, I, as an author, am really thrilled to have you tonight. It's rare I get to speak to somebody about their creative process and what they are doing. So I'm going to invite you to just go ahead and jump in. Tell me about the process of doing this and maybe what you learned when you're ready.
Yeah, what I learned when I'm ready, or when I'm ready to talk, or when
you're ready to
I'm
talk.
Still not
Take
ready.
it away. Take it away.
Yeah. So thanks, Ryland. I appreciate the invite. And you know what, man? Always fun to kick it with you. So yeah. So in terms of the process of writing this, I actually have to contradict a little bit, which is totally not in my nature. Something that you said earlier around not having control and not having creative control. I actually, and I don't know if, I think maybe this was just the benefit or just the going through the process. I actually found that I had a significant amount of control over the content, the research on the overall writing process. I did learn though that my writing can be I'm prone to opinionated flourishes, where I which is a phrase that I love using now, that my boss used. He's like, you keep using these opinionated flourishes, and I'm like, yes, I like flowery language when I'm trying to make a convincing argument, but it actually, it can detract from your argument if you get too sort of opiniony.
Yeah.
But by and large, I would say, 90-95%, I had very significant control over the creative process. And that, 5 or 10% was really one, learning the process of going through and conducting research. And I to me, that was a really important piece, because where I started out in my research is not where I ended up. So I started out with a very different hypothesis than I ended up with, and I think that was a good thing, because I came into this with some of my own bias, some of my own preconceived notions, and ultimately I had to really focus and say, I had to be a good BA. I'm not gonna let my opinion of what the solution should be cloud the outcome. I'm going to let the research and the data and the experts that I'm engaging with help steer me to where I need to go with this research.
So it sounds like you had a really good group of, obviously you were at work. So in whatever way people were giving you input and editing and notes, if I may put it in the general sense, they gave you notes on your things. It said maybe a little less Vince voice here, maybe a little more objective voice over there, that kind of thing. Which is different because you're speaking on behalf of, you're speaking with your own voice, definitely. I think that's clear when I read the thing. You're also speaking on behalf of your employer, because this needs to be a industry publication, and it is. I think the quality of it and the work shown is very, very high. So
correct. And I think if I recall, Ryland, when we talked about this earlier, I believe you said you loved it. Was that?
Yeah, I do.
Did you drop the L-bomb on this document?
Well, I'm not prepared to marry it or take it to dinner, but I do love it.
Right. You don't. Yeah, but and that to me, so I do want to thank you as well, because you were one of the expert contributors to this research.
A thing no one's known till now, by the way, folks, but that's okay.
Well, and that was the slide that I was going to share, was Ryland's bio page at the end. That's, let's separate the two. I'm not here because Ryland was a contributor, but I was really nervous to hear from you what you thought of it, because I was like, did I go too waterfall-y? Because the argument that I'm trying to make and I'm going to share my screen if you don't mind.
Sure, go right ahead. I think I enabled
The
it.
argument that I was trying to make in this research was, it's possible to find balance. I was trying to do like a Star Wars thing. Let's find balance in the Force, right? It's
Yeah,
not a matter of agile or waterfall, because I find through my research I found that organizations really struggle with making that transition because either they're not prepared to make sort of the holistic, you know, the changes that are required. Like they think that,
yeah,
oh, this is just how we deliver projects. It's not how we govern. It's not how we make decisions. It's not how we fund. It's not how we do all these other things.
right.
Right. And so, this was about finding that balance, and that balance, that pivot point is going to be different for different organizations, but it helps. This document helps walk you through finding that pivot point, finding that balance, so that you can, almost like right size your processes, right size your approach, and right size how you're going to deliver. And so now that I've shared that, I do want to go right to here, because that, like, how could you not like that face?
Even if the picture is appropriately somewhat old, because you can tell by the amount of gray in my beard that I have more rings than I
Oh,
used to have. In around the torso also, which you can't tell from that picture, but we'll leave it there.
right.
Um, and
Listen,
also
I still use a picture from 2013 because I look way better.
I
Right?
almost feel like it's professional catfishing. I need to
Yeah. Oh,
update my
completely.
pictures. It caused
Like
me to update
this.
my pictures in places. Yeah, no, and you
Yeah.
look way too much of a kid there. I mean, it's
Right.
just you need
10 years
you
ago.
need the expert cachet of some more gray and wrinkles. Just saying, okay?
Well,
Because
it is coming in here. So like,
well,
but
that's
that's why I shave. But that's why I have the glasses now, so I can do this.
so.
Interesting.
And it was great to be on a page with Fabrizio because it constantly reminds me I'm supposed to get in touch with him. We're having some kind of echo a little bit. If anybody isn't on mute, please mute yourselves. So just a thing to note, I want to point one thing out.
Yeah.
One reason I love this topic about agility here, and I'll turn it back to you to share whatever you like, was that, I routinely say this, and I mean, I ran into it and I've run into this in a few places, like, that some people, when they're adopting Agile, say, well, this just means we're going to start writing code. We don't have to have requirements, or just have to put a thing out there. Or, as I said it on LinkedIn when I was teasing this session, it was, we just take our business requirements and put one in each story and call it a day. Isn't that good? And the answer is no. That's not a story. A business requirement or a functional requirement is not a story. Those are not the same thing. So I'm wondering, I'm sure when you talk to experts, that was not news to them. I have an idea of whom you spoke to, and I would be shocked if it was. But I wouldn't be surprised if you ran your information past people who weren't familiar with this and said, well, why couldn't I just do that? And I'm wondering how that went for you, again, as knowledge, but also like, how'd you deal with that if it happened?
Yeah, and that was the interesting thing, and I came to this section because this one really meant a lot to me, because this one perfectly in like 4 slides you see the debate that I have within my head all the time. I can debate almost any topic from multiple perspectives, and so this like 4 slide sequence perfectly captures what you just described there. There were people that said, we don't need documentation. Documentation is not a thing.
Yeah.
And to me, the problem with that is, if you don't have documentation, it's hard to be agile. It's hard to be agile because you're constantly revalidating your current state. Every time you want to go make a change, you have to go and validate your current state.
Yeah,
So
nothing's a defect anymore. I mean, you kind of have to walk in with this thing of like, well, if we don't have any documentation of how it's supposed to work, how it works is correct, and everything is just new work.
But even that, it's still discovery, right? You still have to figure out how it works. And so the argument here is like, we need to right size how we're doing documentation. So the documentation needs to provide value.
I think
yeah.
No, that bottom sentence is perfect. The point is not to eliminate all documentation, but rather to question why we're producing it so we can create just enough to deliver value, right? What is just enough?
Correct.
Documentation to enable working software.
Right. And I love this quote from Philip, who was also a contributor. What does the next person need to do their work well to gain a shared or gain or create a shared understanding?
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about the next person isn't the developer who's writing the code. The next person might be the change manager who needs to develop a training program. The next person might be an operational manager who needs to communicate the change to their business. And so when you start thinking about it like that, it forces you to really put assign a value to documentation. So again, this is that argument, right? Because documentation comes at a cost. There is a cost. So please don't read all of this, folks. That if you want to read this, go and download it. We've got a link. Like, this is a lot to read. I'm not going to read it.
Yeah, don't.
But
This is
documentation comes at a cost. There is a cost to producing it, right?
Yeah.
Time, invested effort, opportunity cost. Like, you're taking time away from something else to create documentation. So it needs to add value. I have a calculator. I developed a documentation calculator that indexes whether you're getting sufficient value. But, and this is where I wanted to get to, the lack of documentation also brings a cost. And so you need to again, it's about finding the balance, right? You need to find that balance, because when you're absent documentation, it's really difficult to onboard new team members. It's really hard to improve from your current state because you're constantly revalidating it. Knowledge management becomes a nightmare because what is the truth? I had an entire exercise in a previous organization where I was asked to build a knowledge repository for all documentation processes requirements, because the audit and compliance group said, we want to audit your processes, and the processes existed in like people's outboxes and in random folders on their desk, on their laptop drive. Like, there was no documentation. It existed somewhere, but it was like everywhere, right? So you need to find that balance. There's a cost to documentation, but there's a cost to lack of documentation. And so that was an important argument, again, in 4 slides, that you've got to find that balance. And I can't tell you, this is the interesting thing, I can't tell you what the right level of documentation is, because I can't answer this question. I can't answer, what does the next person need? Everyone's different. Every organization is different.
So you're reminding me of a couple of things. One is that statement, never time to do it right, but always time to do it twice.
Always time to do it twice, which is so ass backwards.
I know, right? Or ready, fire, aim kind of sort of.
Right.
I feel that the documentation question really goes hand in hand with that thing of, never time to do it right, because you need this cost met to the right level for your group, right? Not too much, not too little. If you're in a highly regulated environment, your level is probably higher. If you're in if you're building medical devices or medical software or things where people's lives are really, really there, you probably have a higher expectation to meet about your documentation, but it produces value. It almost maybe, let's put it this way, given that lives are on the line, it's the right thing to do, right? It is also the enlightened self-interest right thing to do, because your insurer probably would use that as, if you're ever sued, okay, what diligence did you apply to know that this was sufficiently tested, that we are not at fault for the person having whatever consequence of that occurred, things like that. But on the flip side, I'm working with some folks right now where, and I love working with them. Sometimes it's like, all right, I see the fragment you've read. I'm working with a team of like 3 developers. I know the developer did the work initially. We consulted. I said, is this enough? It was referencing a thing before I got to the team. Like, is this enough for you to work from? Yeah, actually, that's extremely clear, given that I've I've talked to the client as well, and I know what this means. All right, sure, and you can test it, and some other developer, because we don't have a QA team member, we're doing peer checking, can validate it. Yes, good. I'll stay out unless you need me. I don't need to add weight and time to a thing that you already know how to do, if you're clear, and as long as it's like a small story, you know. Meanwhile, there are other things that I know we're not going to get to for a while, and I write a full user story with references and notes and why I said what I said. And it may have taken 30 minutes, but it's solid. And when we come back to it in a month, when it pops up in the backlog for planning in another sprint or two from a month from now, I'll have a clue. So it's that's a half hour. It parked the knowledge for enough time. And some of you may not know, I'm referencing a statement that's common in Agile, which is, the card is not a set of requirements. The user story is not a set of requirements. It's a promise for a conversation. So when the dev I was working with said, "Oh yeah, no, I've talked to the client," I'm omitting names for those reasons, obviously. I talked to the client and I totally get what they want. Okay, good. As long as it's clear, testable, etc., and we're all solid. Good. Go ahead and roll with it. Call me if you discover a complexity that we needed to document. I'm good, because it's not going to hurt anything in this case. So just those kinds of things. Let me throw one other thing at folks. Folks, just so you know, Vince mentioned you can get this at the InfoTech website. Vince, I don't know if you need a specific link or not to this one.
Yeah. Let me. Oh, that's the chat. I'll drop that in the chat.
Yeah. I wanted to share with everybody. It's worth doing. I know they get your email address. Don't panic. They don't spam you like crazy. You can let them know you either are or are not a decision maker. I have done this myself once or twice when I needed a document that I thought they were good, because I really, look, I'm not getting paid for this. I'm just telling you, I talk with InfoTech a lot and I enjoy the work they output. I found it valuable. Okay. I would recommend that, even before Vince was there, but he has taken it to a home. I mean, let's just, let's get there.
Yeah.
So just letting you know, that's where you can get this document, and, don't be afraid at the email wall. Okay, it's really not like they're going to spam you like crazy. Okay, so I think you shared really well, like one of the things that the thing you learned, right? What's the right level of documentation to do? And that's the thesis statement, right? It's got value. Like you said, not doing it, or doing it has a cost. Not doing it very likely has a much greater cost.
Right.
So I was kind of wondering, if we go back to your process of learning, like you interview this, I suspect this is the first time you had to interview like 8 to 12. Was it that many people?
Oh, I blew that number away, Ryland.
Okay,
I was like 12. I'm going to interview like 20 people.
Man, so tell me about that. What happened?
And so you have to remember, because context matters, right?
Yes.
For BAs, context matters. It was my first research, and I'm like, I'm going to kill this thing.
Yes.
I am going to absolutely destroy it. Now I'm on to like my 5th piece, and it's like, what is the absolute bar that I need to hit? No, I'm just joking. I'm still trying to kill it, but I'm much more aware of picking my targets. And so in the first one, I was like, I'm just going to destroy this thing. So yeah, it was interesting because, while there's definitely elements of me and my thought process in here, it really is the experts that I interviewed who informed, the research. It's not, and that, I guess that's the difference between, research and opinion.
Yeah.
I probably could have written this on my own without talking to anybody, and it would have been very different, and it probably wouldn't have been as useful. But because of being able to connect with industry experts, thought leaders, folks like yourself, Angela Wick, Fabricio, Philip, Paula Bell, just, I'm like name dropping now.
It's okay.
But it was an opportunity to glean information from them, and then the onus was on me to say, okay, how does this all fit together now? Because everybody came at it from a slightly different angle. So it was a matter of, okay, how do I synthesize this into something that can be useful and helpful and practical in, supporting the members of InfoTech. And so, you know, it was really the first time I had to do that, because historically, I mean, prior to joining InfoTech, I was with, a government agency. I wrote sort of internal white papers when I was trying to sell a business case. And even then it was like, this is what's happening out in the industry, but here's my opinion. When I'm doing a keynote, it's me, it's my perspective, it's my opinion. I've started changing that though since joining InfoTech, where I am building in a lot more research elements. One of the things that Hans Ekman, who recruited me into InfoTech, said is this will definitely change how you speak and how you
Yes.
prepare. And so, and he was bang on. So I find myself really, I'll go and collect data, and I will build an argument around that data, and I will, like, it's fundamentally changed my approach to things. But this was a first go where it was like, I can't just rely on myself. I need to engage the community.
Sounds like with having talked to so many people on this project, and then you're on to your fifth. I'm excited to see the others. I don't think any have been released yet. I feel like
So I'm working on my fifth right now, which is a really, really cool piece on AI, the impact on AI in requirements management. So,
okay. Yeah.
but the other
Looking,
three have not been published. They should be published soon, but they haven't been published.
I
They're
feel like
much smaller pieces though.
I make that's all cool. I just am thinking I couldn't possibly have missed them. I mean, that's not
No,
a
no,
thing, right?
no.
Okay. So my thought was there that there is a certain point of diminishing returns in interviews, is my guess. I don't want to say, I was going to make a joke about, oh my God, you're becoming a slacker, but I think it's more of a, all right, how far into diminishing returns should I go? Because there will
Correct.
be a point. And how much alignment is there? Do I need a dissenting voice? If I've done 5 interviews already and there's really not a lot of variance here, I don't know how much more variance, how much non-variance I need. Can I find a dissenter? Knowing someone might dissent with the things I've got, let me find somebody. Or do you have a different approach? How do you judge that? Because just so everybody knows, the reason I think this is relevant for us as a group is that's requirements management to us in a way too, requirements gathering, right? When we talk to stakeholders, if they're all saying the same thing, that's great. But did you miss anybody? Because requirements monoculture, when I see it, there's a part of me that's happy, and there's another part of me that says, what are we missing? Everyone's agreeing. It's never that easy.
Yeah. And so so you're right. There is a matter of diminishing returns, and this is where I'm trying to right size my own approach. What I like to do is, and I'm finding this now with my current project on AI, is that I am naturally getting those differing dissenting opinions, because there are some people that I will talk to and they're just like, they don't know where to start, and so therefore they're paralyzed. There are some people that I'll talk to that are so excited at the possibility, and they're already projecting 5-10 years out of what are the implications and what is it going to mean for us. So I don't have a hard and fast sort of like, I need to have a dissenting voice. I think I've canvassed enough, so I've been completely reliant on my network, and so
But
in
the BA space, you have a non-trivial network. You have
I know.
yeah. I mean,
I
come on,
know.
throw a stone and you hit somebody Vince knows.
Well, it was, a couple of weeks ago, I was at BBC, and it was like,
See,
I'm hanging out, I'm sitting at the table, and like, oh, there's, I'm gonna name drop again. Oh, there's Adrian
okay.
Reed. There's Tina Lovelock. Yeah, we're just hanging out. It's cool. There's hanging out with Fabrizio. It was actually the first time I met Fabrizio in person. We have been like brothers for the last 2 years virtually. And now I think I'm invited to stay at his place in Brazil.
Ah,
But that's neither here nor there. But I did want to really lean on my network, because you guys are it's funny. So this is funny, Rylan. This is going to sound weird. I've only been sort of speaking in the space since about 2015 is when I got started.
Mhm.
So, I used to, I mean, I would look up to, when I got started, the big names were, Bob Prentice, who everybody
Yeah.
probably remembers,
Mhm.
the late Bob Prentice,
Yeah.
Angela Wick, Coop,
Mhm.
Hans,
Yeah.
yourself. Like, you guys were the names. You guys were the big, it was like, oh my God, it's Ryland.
Oh my
Can I
God,
go
that's
talk to him?
hilarious.
And now it's like, well,
That's hilarious.
not that I'm like, we're all boys, but like, that is what it feels like, right? So, you're right. I have a non-trivial network, but there was a time, not in the not too different distant past, where, you know, you guys were the folks that I looked up to. And
Yeah.
when it came to things like this, that hasn't changed. I still value all of your opinions very highly, because it's like when when you're in school, your teacher is always your teacher. Even when you're an adult, your
Right.
teacher is still your teacher, right? You
Right.
still think of them as that authority figure. You guys are that authority figure to me, even though there's not that much difference in our age.
No.
You just got started earlier than I did.
Well, both things. Yeah, I think I started in the world a little earlier than you, but there you go.
There you go.
You're right. So let me ask you this, if it's all right. Something I hear you talking about, I'm not sure you're saying it the same way, is imposter syndrome.
Oh, 1,000%.
Okay.
Yes.
And
Sorry.
for
Go finish with your question.
and for those of you who don't know in the room, imposter syndrome is the idea that when it is described simply this way: a highly competent person is terrified that they are not as competent as they appear, or that they're faking it and they will be found out, and so forth. So if you're one of those people who constantly got A's but assumed that something was horribly wrong and that at any moment you might get an F because really that's what your work deserved, you may have suffered from imposter syndrome in some way. So Vince is kind of describing that, and I've had my own moments with it, and I
Hmm.
may or may not get to talk about them. They're not really critical, but the idea that he walked into a room being skilled at this stuff. I'm saying at this point, maybe when he was first talking, I mean, about getting into speaking, he wasn't an imposter at about the speaking thing. He was new, but about his knowledge level, probably was experiencing that a bit. But the first few times you're speaking, it's scary. It's legitimately scary, by the way.
Oh, it's terrifying.
But writing this paper, the one where we've been referring to,
Yeah.
it sounds, Vince, like you might have had some imposter syndrome about this, and I'm wondering, but which would, because it's the first time you're on stage this way, in a manner of speaking,
Yes.
So I wonder about that, because obviously you're capable and you've done a great job, and that kind of thing. And
Thank
you
you.
want to knock it out of the park first thing. But I'm just saying, that's so, folks, that's what imposter syndrome is, and that's what I wanted to ask Vince about a little.
Yeah. So I get really bad imposter syndrome even at this point. I mean, like, I've been on stage in front of 500-600 people, and every time it's this feeling that, like, is this the moment where everyone's going to realize I'm actually completely full of it?
But I
I
don't know
don't
what
know anything. I
I'm
don't know anything.
doing.
And this like house of cards is going to completely collapse. It hits me every time. um I don't know if, like, I've learned to deal with it. So I have, I'll put on like my Beats headphones. I've got my keynote mix that is like my pump up. Think of like how I
Yep.
met your mother with Barney and his like pump up mix, which starts with Bon Jovi and just keeps ramping up.
I can
It's
understand.
like that. It's like that. And so, it's my way of getting into my zone. And people look at me and like, why is that guy shadow boxing in the corner? It's because I'm getting ready
Yeah.
mentally. And
Yeah.
so, this paper was very much like that, because I came in with this fanfare of like, I've got this network I can lean on. I'm this thought leader
Right.
who speaks internationally. And then, was this the research that was going to expose that I was actually full of it? And so that, as much as I try not to, I try to value my own opinion and my own perspective. This is where, when someone like Ryland or Fabricio or Philip or Angela or anybody says, hey, I read it, it was fantastic, there's almost this like,
Oh,
because I thought you were going to hate it. Like, it's just this feeling, and it's
oh.
really hard to overcome. I'm not looking for like validation or
No,
anything. Like,
it's
it's not. It's
And
not
it's
like, please
okay.
want me, love me. But it's just
No,
it can be crippling where it's like, I hope you really like it. Like,
yeah, it's scary to put that
yeah.
finished product out. And I wanted the folks on our call and who may listen later to understand that is a thing everyone at every level
Mm,
deals with. If I mean, if
hmm
there anybody I know, I mean, there are things, if you know, if Vince has done it, I'm gonna speak, I'm gonna ask you if it's this kind of thing. This works for me. When I have a talk I've done 20 times, and I have those talks, I'm not worried about it. If you want me to do that in 5 minutes, I'm going to review my material and double check a couple of things. I'm going to go out and give the talk, and I'm not really worried about it. I've had feedback on how I give that talk more than once, and I've made any edits I need to if it's a
hmm
thing. Something I have not written before, something I've never performed before, a new presentation, not based on an old presentation, at least not really based on one, you know, just maybe there's a few pieces of it, but the rest of it is whole cloth. It's like,
hmm
you know, yeah, I'll get nervous on that. I mean, I have a lot to rest on to know, all right, I know how to have a measure that says, all right, I've done all the things that have made me successful in other new things. So this is probably okay. But there are times I've done way less than I planned on with the presentation, or my big thing has been editing down. Feedback I frequently get on my new things is you tried to cram way too much into that hour,
mm,
minutes, or 45, whatever time I had. And I've said, yeah, I got to work on editing. Editing is a hard skill. So I'm just letting you all know, don't let it keep you from doing the thing. The only way you'll
mm,
learn is by doing it. The only way you get over or have the tools in your pocket to get over the imposter syndrome, which many high performers have, you will either learn, oh my God, I really do suck at this, in which case, okay, figure out how to get better at it. But more likely, if you've really spent the work and really spent the time preparing and everything else, you'll go and do just fine. And maybe it won't be perfect, but take the B. It's okay. You can polish it and do it again next time, or your next project will be better. That kind of thing.
mm.
Like Vince, you spent all that on this one, which was your flagship maiden voyage thing. And you learned a lot about what to do better the next, well, how to make it easier, maybe the
How to make
next,
it easier.
which is a
Yeah.
big deal.
And that was an important part to me in going through the process the first time. Was I am going to just be at the mercy of the process. I am a process guy, so I'm always looking for what is the better way of doing this, what is the faster way of doing this. I intentionally suspended that perspective this
Okay.
first time, because I just wanted to, like, I wanted to give in to the process. Let's
Mhm.
go through it, and let's not question it as I'm going through it, but then after the fact, I'm taking a look through and saying, okay, what can I do differently the next time, right?
And
Because
when you say the process, do you mean
yes,
like the InfoTech method of
yeah,
process of working through this kind of a topic?
yes, there's a very prescriptive approach, which I don't think I can share, but there
No,
is
I'm
a
not
very
asking.
prescriptive approach to how this work is done to
Yeah,
ensure, you know, to ensure a high level of quality.
yeah.
And so, again, could I have written this in a weekend by myself? Yes, but it wouldn't have been as good, and it
No,
wouldn't have been
this
as
is
useful.
this is a 121 page document when I look at the PDF I've got. And it is dense. It is not a deck that reads like, 4 bullet points and a picture, that kind of thing.
Right.
This is like, okay, you kind of have a book here, really. If you wrote
Oh,
this slightly differently, it would
I
just
never
be a
thought
book.
about that.
Well, I
Mm.
mean, if you wrote this, I mean, the thing about turning it into a book, obviously, would just be, and you of course you thought about that,
I
was,
didn't actually, but
uh-oh, oh well, there you
too late
go.
now. Too late
I
now.
know. It's like, all
Yeah.
right. But the thing about it would be, you've used a lot of pictures, which are awesome. Keep doing that. A good
Mhm.
picture, folks may have heard me say it, pictures worth 1,000 words, right? A good picture is worth 10,000. So he's going to have to come up with a few more words here and there, because
Right.
it would have to go along with the pictures. There's some other things, but this makes a lot of sense. So, okay, so you got over the imposter syndrome there, but you were worried about it, and you did have to work a whole new process. So there was
Sorry,
a certain amount
I
of,
want to jump in there, Ryland, because I
yeah,
didn't get over it. I have learned to deal with it,
yeah,
and that
locally
it's an
overcome. That's what I
okay.
should say.
Sorry,
Get
sorry.
over
Yes,
it in a particular instance of a thing,
yes, yes.
right?
Okay,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, that kind of thing. That's all I really mean, because you're right.
Okay.
It doesn't really go away. You learn how to manage it, or even to take advantage of it and say, you know what? I need to not sit down with computer games tonight. I need to do one more round of editing on that thing before I give it tomorrow. Let me just
Hmm.
check.
Hmm.
So things like that. Vince, let me ask you to go ahead and give any last thoughts you want to do right this minute. It's not that we have to stop. I want to check with people about questions. And if there
Yeah.
aren't any, I've got a few of my own I may throw in.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't have, I mean, I guess
Yeah.
this will be my opportunity to say, I just relaunched my new website, so please go check it out, vincentmirabelli.com. I am currently, I've got a pretty packed schedule for speaking, but I mean, if anyone's looking for keynotes or anything for a conference, I don't know, I don't know, something, or a corporate thing, please reach out. I'm always happy to do those. And what's actually really cool is it's now a part of my job. So, in the past I was always taking vacation, but thanks to the nature of the work that I do and all of this stuff, like it's become part of my job, which is awesome. So
Yeah.
yeah, vincentmirabelli.com just relaunched, recognized that I was my old webmaster, and I don't think webmaster is even a term anymore, but like I was my own web dev and I sucked at it, but I couldn't so I finally broke down and just hired someone to do it because they actually know what they're doing. And I think it looks really good. But love to hear feedback on that too.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I like the design. It's nice and
Thank
clean
you.
and does things. And then mine is terrible, by the way, for anybody who goes and looks at it. Hasn't been updated in, I think, at least 10 years. And I need to fix that someday.
Yeah.
And it's a similar kind of concept of like, I need to pare this down. Whatever I thought I was going to do with it, agility, there you go. 10 years later, no, that wasn't what I was going to do with this.
Yeah.
So I need to change that. But let's take a quick look here. I wanted to see, please feel free to raise your hand if you have a question that you have not typed in. I know we only have one or two in here. Let me go with this, as Claudine had said. It's sort of a question at the end. Let's just check on it. I agree, it's difficult to be agile if you know it. She did this early. If you have no idea of what is really important in the project, the key is to ensure that we do just enough for the context. How do you, I don't know if it was more of a comment, so I'll take it as a question. How do you even create a backlog without some documentation? And I think I just kind of agree. I mean, a
Yeah.
backlog is a form of documentation, and then what's in it needs to be fit for purpose.
Right. And then it's up to you to define, okay, when is this uh feature, function, whatever, this word, this, like, it can't just be that all the way through your backlog funnel. It needs to evolve to the point where it gets ready to be worked on. And
Yeah.
so maybe it starts out as an idea, as a concept, but over time, like, this is where the analysis happens to flesh out, but it's still part of your backlog. So I agree with it as well.
So let me throw a thing, and I've been, Colleen, I don't mean to misrepresent you there. It was definitely, I felt it was a comment, but it's a good place to start off with. So I want to throw a thought in here for a minute to everybody. And I struggle with this myself sometimes. Okay. As BAs, and I'm guessing most people here are, we have a problem of overanalyzing things. We may analyze past the point of extremely diminished returns. Right, we want to be careful of it. That's not to say we shouldn't analyze. It's just to say let's be careful of how far we go. We have a risk of going too far. So what I like to say, I'm sorry, okay, I don't know why my phone sounds like it's an emergency. It's not. The thing I guess I'm thinking about here is in agility or potentially waterfall, if you're using a backlog to organize yourself there, we might have a moment where we're saying, oh my goodness, those things in the backlog are so undefined. I need more than just a sentence. You can start a sentence with you can start a backlog with just a sentence in places in your backlog. If it'll help you get prioritization done, and it may help you let your stakeholders do some value assessment, and you can say, all right, let's take the top 5 things we agree we should do. You might have a workshop with your stakeholders about, let's just talk about the first 5 or 10 things, whatever seems appropriate to your horizon. Could we elaborate those enough to the point where we could get a few stories written in the next 2 weeks so that we could start beyond that point or something. Those are the kinds of things I like to think about with it. It's like it is okay to treat everything not necessarily as an epic or a feature or a story, but to use a term that some frameworks use. It's a product backlog item or a PBI. I'm telling you what it is. It's just in the backlog. It could be tech debt. It could be a feature that needs decomposition. That just because it's in the backlog doesn't mean we're going to do it the way it is sitting in the backlog. But at least you've got something that you could start working with and point to and gain joint agreement around. So
right.
I'll say that I'll take that if I have to, if people don't even know where they want to start.
Yeah, and I think what you're describing there is a almost unhealthy level of analysis paralysis. Not that like analysis paralysis is healthy. It's not. I like to describe myself as a recovering perfectionist, because I used to be that guy that was like, no, I'm not done. It's not perfect. And I had to get really, really comfortable with good enough. And, like I do the same thing with my keynotes now. Like, could I have rehearsed that one more time? Or to your point, Ryland, could I have edited it down? There's a reason why my approach to keynotes is a big bold image and like 2 words. 2 reasons. I'm gonna let you in. This is all secret.
Don't
2 reasons. Anybody. One, it forces you to listen to me. If I put all my words on a slide, then you're not listening to me, you're reading them. But 2, I don't know what I'm gonna say until I'm saying it. And so that image is a trigger for me of like, tell this story, talk about this, talk about that. And if I put words on a slide, I'm committed to them. And so what it means is that every time I do a keynote, or every time I do a session, or every time I do something, it's different, because I can respond to the audience. I can, like, it's just different. Different doesn't mean good necessarily. Sometimes it's
varying
worse,
quality levels,
right?
sure.
But that took a long time to get really comfortable with. Is this good enough that I can put it out into the world, right? We talked about this, the paper. You could apply the same thing to like a video on YouTube. You could apply the same thing to a podcast, that if you wanted to create a podcast. It's is this good enough to put out into the world? And the answer is always yes. Always yes. Like, will your 50th podcast be better than your first? Yes. But you can't get to the 50th unless you publish the first.
Oh yeah,
so
absolutely.
So you have to get over that perfectionism, and like, and so whether we're talking about a backlog or we're talking about a keynote, like, good enough is good enough.
So I'm going to share one I always use with people, and I see a few people giving thumbs up. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. And I always love the reaction. I know Vince, I expect Vince does too.
I'm an energy vampire. I feed off of like the audience.
Extrovert.
No, opposite.
No, you're more of an introvert, so you need that. Okay.
Completely.
Interesting.
Anyways, that's another conversation. Sorry, you were going to say something.
That's okay. What I was going to say is real short. Something I coached myself on was, because I always was like, God darn it, there's so much more I meant to get done in that session or whatever. I said, you know what? You hit the things you committed to hit in either your syllabus or your, in the little blurb that goes into conference things, because I'm supposed to summarize what I'm doing in about, 200 words or less, or something that goes in used to go into a printed thing. Now that doesn't happen, of course, which I'm perfectly happy about. I think a lot of the apps are great. But anyway, used to say that to myself, and the phrase kind of came down to this: nobody knows what you meant to do. They only know what you did.
Exactly.
That cuts both ways, right? If I thought, oh my God, I was going to get so much more on this, and I didn't, as long as I actually covered the topic, edit, and y'all may not know this, but editing anything to a 1-hour conversation is a really big deal if it's a serious topic. That is a really big deal, especially when you're leaving 15 to 20 minutes or more for questions and conversation. It becomes a huge thing. So let me check again for a second, because we're gonna wrap up right about the hour. I know Vince nobody knows, and Vince, I hope you don't mind me mentioning, Vince has had a sore throat a bit. He's doing he's committed. He is a professional. He showed up. He is doing,
I
and he's
have all
given
my
us a
stuff here.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yes, a grain of salt on the professional thing. Well, it's all right. We'll
Yeah.
call it that. It's all good. I like to fake being a professional myself. It works.
Oh,
Well.
no, I was just showing all my medication that like
Oh, is that
proves
it? I
that
thought it was like
that
salt
this is all my
shakers.
medication.
I
No,
couldn't
it's all,
quite tell.
yeah.
So let's just check. Any other questions for anybody would like to ask a direct question for Vince? Either raise your hand or take yourself off mic and off mute and join us in. I'm kind of going once, going twice. Okay, so we'll do one more thing I was thinking of, and then we will simply conclude. So Vince, you kind of touched on a thing that I loved, which was with your 50 podcast thing. Like, you got to start the first one. You got to, you don't get to the 50th unless you do the first through 49. And by the time you're through 10 or 20 of them, you're kind of saying, all right, I know how bad I can screw up. Let me do, this isn't going to be that horrible, right? And there have been times I myself, I can tell you, I've done one interview with somebody and I don't know what happened that day, but he played it back to me or gave me a copy. So I just want to check it with you before I put it out there. I think it's fine. I asked him to pull it because I was saying, oh my God, that was terrible. Please don't publish that. I will re-record it with you at a time of your convenience. I am so sorry. I'm so mad at how I handled the questions you asked me. I took forever to get there, which, by the way, I know is a thing for me, but it was so bad that time. And it was relatively early in my presenting that I said, I please yank this. And he thought it was fine, but I said, I can't. I'm sorry you don't see it, but it is terrible. And I don't think I was being imposter syndrome, but it wouldn't hurt me if I had been. So Vince, what other might you think about for people who want to get started on something? Let's pretend somebody in our group has a creative impulse that they're not quite going with yet. What would you suggest to them?
Just start. I mean, even within the community, there are people that are doing a lot of really cool things and a lot of different things. So find someone that's doing what you want to do. And that can shorten your learning curve. It's not going to make it nil, but it's going to help shorten it. Because, there are people that podcast, there are people that live stream, there are people that write books, there are people that write articles, there are like everyone. That's the interesting thing about the community is that, someone is doing what you want to, what you're trying to do. I will say, even if someone else is doing something, they don't have your voice. And so if you feel that you have something that you want to say, then you should absolutely say it. Be comfortable. So I'll share a story I've never shared before, if I may. I knew that I wanted to be a professional speaker when I got booed off stage in Chicago. I was at a conference in Chicago. I was trying to make an argument that, business analysis is good, but if you combine it with another discipline, you become much more valuable. And the response from the audience was so negative. I walked off stage after I was done, after I like muddled through it, and I went to the conference organizer and I said, I'm never doing that presentation again. What an absolute disaster. And I haven't. But I still wanted to get back out there. And so that was a huge L, a huge loss, but I still wanted to go. And so, find the thing that you enjoy doing. So I enjoy live streaming. I've got a live stream show called Analysts After Work. I enjoy podcasting. I have a podcast called Business Not As Usual. I do those because I love them, not because I'm not benefiting in any way financially or otherwise, but I love doing them. And so it makes the journey of going through, oh man, that was terrible, that much easier, because it's just like, I'm just doing this for fun and I love it. So find that thing that you love and just do that thing.
Fantastic. I think I want that to be our final word. I don't want to add anything onto what Vince said there. I think that was just beautiful. So I think we're going to stop here for the night. Thank you all for joining in. Remember our other upcoming events. Take a look at RylandLayton.eventbrite.com. Take a look there. Vince, if you're doing speaking and other things, can people find that on your website?
You can definitely find him on my website. I'll be in the DC area for Project Summit BA World in next week, actually. And then I've got a couple, I'll be in Austin, Texas for Austin's Bad in September. I've got a bunch of other things planned between now and the end of the year, but you can always catch up on the latest at my website, vincentmirabelli.com.
All right. Let me say thank you to everybody for attending tonight. And please, if you haven't already connected with Vince or myself on LinkedIn, please go ahead and do so. It's the best way to keep updated on just anything anybody's doing, plus his other publications as they come out, as that is where I frequently hear of them too. And I'm excited to get to go see them and find out about it. And that's it. So have a great night, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and be well.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Okay. Take care, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.